So again, it took a couple of the younger guys saying, we ought to contact the show Ghost Hunters.
Yes.
So we did. The next day, filled out just informational stuff, a small field, 250 characters, describe, what's going on. We had a hard time because there were so many stories.
Yeah, I bet.
So we kind of cannibalized a couple and put it in, sent it. Big disclaimer down at the bottom that said, please allow 6 to 8 weeks for us to get back to you because we're so busy.
Yeah.
They called in about 45 minutes.
Welcome to the Destination Saratoga All Access Podcast, brought to you by Discover Saratoga. Here is your host, Mackenzie Zarzicki.
This podcast takes you behind the scenes with the people shaping Saratoga County's vibrant culture, rich history, and thriving community. This episode is sponsored by Julie & Co. Welcome back to Destination Saratoga All Access. Today's episode comes to you from the historic Canfield Casino and beautiful Congress Park. I'm joined by local historian and storyteller Charlie Kuenzel, who brings Saratoga's rich past to life. From famous figures to hidden tales, get ready for a fascinating journey through one of the city's most iconic landmarks. Let's get into it. We're here at the historic Canfield Casino. I'm here with Charlie Kuenzel, the Education and Program Director here at the Saratoga Springs History Museum, and the past board president.
Yes, I am. So nice to have you here. Welcome, everybody, to our house.
Yes, I love it. So how long have you been involved with the History Museum?
About 25 years.
Wow. So you've got a lot of stories to share.
Yeah, most of them are true, but yeah, I've got a lot of stories to share.
I love that. So let's start right here where we are inside the incredible Canfield Casino. What makes this building so unique and important to the story of Saratoga Springs?
Saratoga Springs has a phenomenal history that's only about a little over 200 years old. We're a latecomer to the party because the Mohawk controlled this area and called it Saratoga, which meant Area of the Great Salt Springs, and didn't let any European involvement here until basically when Gideon and DeWanda Putnam built their first hotel in 1802. So what I'm trying to get to is the fact that when we started, we erupted. We really got on the scene very quickly with big hotels, etc. The opulence that was here throughout, we were the #1 tourist destination in the United States in the 1800s.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it truly is. I mean, and the history and the stories and everything that support it are amazing. But gradually, we have to reinvent ourselves. And that's what any city does. I don't know if I love the new book Abundance by Ezra Klein in terms of the story of how you put together communities, etc. Very, very insightful. And basically, Saratoga's had to reinvent. Big hotels didn't go over because nobody was spending 3 months here.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to get to is this is one of the last vestiges, it truly is, of that whole 1800 period and especially the Gilded period. So.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the Gilded Age. It's a very popular time. There's an HBO series. I think it's definitely something that our listeners are interested in. Can you tell us a little bit about that time here in Saratoga Springs?
The Gilded period is a tale of two cities in the sense that it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. The term was coined, as you probably all know, by Mark Twain, 1873, his book, The Gilded Age. It's the only book that was co-authored by Twain. Twain came to Saratoga all the time. He used to play pool on Broadway at night, but he was here a lot of summers. And basically what he did was he highlighted the fact that there was a tremendous amount of change, and most of it was rooted in the fact that there was enormous wealth and some very bad, abject poverty. In fact, he coins the word gilded, meaning you put a layer of gold over something that's rotting.
Okay.
And the rest of the country was rotting. And you put the gold over and everybody goes, oh, it's wonderful, it's good. But what we were able to do is to capitalize on it was the fact that we did push social norms here, which was very good with the ultra wealthy. And we were hands down, the number one tourist destination. We eclipse Newport. I've given lots of talks on this. I've written a couple books on it. And I got to tell you, it's one of these things where we can prove hands down more wealth was here in the summer than any other place. So as a result, Saratoga did prosper during that Gilded period because of the wealth that was here.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually want to skip ahead because you're talking a little bit about the Gilded Age in the hotels. But in the 1800s, hotels like the Grand Union Hotel and the United States Hotel, they weren't just a place to stay. They were destinations within themselves. How did these iconic establishments shape Saratoga's history and help build the legacy the city is known for today?
Really good question. First of all, you have to kind of put yourself in the mind of the traveler. And during the antebellum period, travel in the United States was slow. It was incredibly slow. We're only the second rail line in the state of New York comes to Saratoga.
Oh, wow.
And it's because of its importance. You don't build something unless you're looking at a profitability of it.
Yeah.
So there was. But when I was president, I worked with the president of Mobile, Alabama Historical Society. We had a woman who visited Saratoga for 4 summers, and her diary was very good. And it talked about how she got here. Now, during that antebellum period, she had to come out of Mobile on a sailing ship around Florida, up the East Coast, arrived in New York, took a Robert Fulton invention, a steamship up the Hudson, and then from Albany to Saratoga was by stagecoach only before the train came. My point is...
Quite the trip.
3 weeks.
Wow, just to come to Saratoga.
So you stayed 3 months.
Okay, yep.
That's the key to this. So the big hotels are built, and when they are built, the culture is they're going to look more like cruise ships of today. They're really going to occupy you totally. They're going to give you, all of them had the American plan, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with 1 night stay. And then they supplied you with the best music, the best dances, the best orators, the best plays. We had an opera house at the Grand Union that was almost, of course, fire standards weren't what they used to be. It was almost as big as the downstairs in SPAC in terms of number of people they squeezed in it. But what they did was they wanted to capture you based on, you're coming to me because the food is good here and you like it. You like Victor Herbert, or you like John Philip Sousa, or whoever our music director is, etc. So it's a package. And what that did was prevent, really, a lot of very palatial houses to be built. North Broadway isn't built until the really the beginning of the Gilded period, because when the South is destroyed in the American Civil War, then all of a sudden the new wealth is Northern industrialists.
Okay.
Northern industrialists now have made all this money during the war, and then they're going to put in the railroads. They're going to have the gold mines, silver mines out west, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is going to follow. They want to look like old money, but they don't want to stay at the hotels, so they build North Broadway.
Okay.
So then we start to get that rise. But for the most part, the hotels are going to set the stage. They're literally going to set the social stage, and the food and the amounts of food. Come to the History Museum, okay? Because we have an incredible exhibit on hotels. And you take a look at what we had to supply them in terms of food every day and the elegance of it, et cetera. So it set. The other thing, which is kind of important, the average blue-collar worker, the average middle-class person of the day didn't know how to take a vacation. The word vacation isn't used in print until 1853 because puritanical America dictates you can't take a vacation. So you don't take a vacation, and the wealthy are the only ones that can afford to say, my health is failing, I need to come someplace where I can rejuvenate my health. That's how we build our base. Now, once we get into the post-Civil War period, middle class is starting to accumulate a little more wealth, and they come here, and believe it or not, there's been a lot of different exposés written on the fact that we help to teach the middle class how to have a vacation.
Oh, I love that.
Because instead of staying 3 months, they stayed 3 days, 4 days.
Yep.
But they watched which fork to use at the dinner table. They watched how the food was put down and taken away, and what palatial, well-educated, socialized people did. So we served that purpose too. But
amazing.
But the hotels really did dictate a lot here.
Yeah, that's amazing. And they took up a lot of geography, too. The hotels were pretty much all of Broadway, right? Between the Grand Union and the United States.
Yeah, Grand Union was on 7 acres. Grand Union 7 acres. United States about 6.5 acres. But they were behemoths. Grand Union had 987 rooms, 26 cottages, 1.5 miles of interior hallway, 500 rocking chairs on the front porch alone.
500 rocking chairs. That's amazing. That's the Saratoga porch, right? Isn't there a saying that there's a Saratoga porch?
Oh, yeah. We stole it from the South. And I just interfaced with Saratoga Arms on all that. Really, it was self-preservation. You didn't have mechanical refrigeration back then. So you had no air conditioning. So you rocked the day away and the night away under the porches. And I contend that was probably one of our first contact sports in Saratoga, was to sit on the porch and gossip about everybody that walked by.
Oh.
Yep, without question. So.
Not much has changed, no.
No,
That's an exciting time.
It really hasn't. That's the scary part of it. But
yeah. The Canfield Casino has long been associated with high society and high stakes. Can you paint a picture of what life was like here in this room during the Gilded Age?
This room was known as the high stakes room, and it was opened in 1870 along with part of the building. Additions were put on, but 1870 was the opening here. This was reserved for approximately 10 to 12 people on a daily basis that would come and gamble, but it was high stakes. Downstairs, we had a gaming room, but it was more pedestrian. And the chips downstairs only went as high as $100. Now, I give a lot of talks, and I've written a lot. Everybody asks, what's the buying power today? I used to use 10, then I went to 12 as a multiplier, then I went to 15. I'm now using 20.
Wow.
And because we didn't have federal income tax back then, it's hard to index, but I'll still go with 20. So that's $2,000 on a turn of a card downstairs. If you were wealthy, and that was the Rockefellers, the Commodore Vanderbilt, Carnegie's, they're all up here in this room. And again, 10 to 12 at any given time. The biggest chip up here in 1870 was $10,000. In conversion, that's $200,000 on every turn of a card.
That's incredible.
So, like I do with the fourth graders every year when we teach them local history, it's like, don't ask me if the wealthy were here. You know, yeah, I think I just answered that for you. In this room, and this is the beauty of our museum, we have kept the authenticity of the colors on the walls. This is a period reproduction carpet. So as a result, when you walk in here or downstairs in the casino, etc., you're really walking back into 1870, 1871.
Yeah.
And the furniture that's up here, etc., it sets that stage. Our gasoliers have been converted to electricity, but still, that's what you have. This was a hotbed. And there's plenty of stories that come out of here in terms of what was invested and what was lost and everything else. So.
That's amazing. I kind of have chills sitting here thinking about all of the famous, socialites who were in this room gambling at one point in time. It really does, being in the museum, bring you back in time.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why it's one of my favorite museums in Saratoga, because you're not just talking history, you're seeing it. And the way you have taken such precaution and care of all of these artifacts, it's pretty incredible.
Well, thank you. That's been our goal. About 5-6 years ago, we went on a real tear in order to make sure we maintained authenticity, but yet still providing exhibits that are up to date and kind of engaging for a new eye and a new group. So
I love that. Now here's a quick message from our sponsor. If you're ready to live in a vibrant downtown full of arts, activities, shopping, fine dining, and world-class thoroughbred racing, or you're drawn to the Adirondack Park with its lakes, trails, festivals, and restaurants, it's time to call Julie & Co. Realty, LLC, your hometown brokerage with local experts. Julie & Co. Realty, LLC gives you the insider's advantage on what's available in Saratoga Springs, the Capital Region, and the Adirondack Park. And with realtors who specialize in lakefront properties, second homes, historic homes, land and commercial listings, they have the premier agent you need to help you buy or sell with confidence. For more information, visit juliecorealty.com. So you touched on it a little bit, but today the Canfield Casino building is home to the Saratoga Springs History Museum, which holds 3 floors of rich local history. Mm-hmm. What are some of your favorite exhibits and why?
Tough question, because I truly love a lot of different things. Now, a lot of my friends will say to me, I know what you're going to pick, Charlie. It's going to be the mineral water. I've almost completed my book on the springs of Saratoga. I was a geologist, okay, so that's near and dear to me. But at the same time, the hotels is phenomenal. Our curator, Michael Levinson, has done a wonderful job with that. Our latest rotating exhibit, which is on suffrage, Saratoga played a tremendous role in the suffrage vote, and especially turning everything in 1917 for confirmation at the state level. Phenomenal. Upstairs, Native American. We worked for 3.5 years with all the tribes to get everything correct on that. We tell a good story there.
That's a great room.
Yeah, we've got, it's a great question, Mackenzie. It really is. But it's difficult because I have so many different interests that to pick one, it's like you get 3 kids. Which one do you like better? You're never going to say in public. That's right.
Well, I definitely am a bit of a feminist. We've talked about this a bit on the podcast, but could you talk a little bit more about women's suffrage and Saratoga's role?
Sure. You've got to understand, first of all, that Saratoga was such a playground for the rich during all of the 1800s that even the suffrage movement in the time looked at, if we're going to have a convention, where are we going to have it?
Yeah.
And there was a statement made by their organizing committee in the early days when they said, should we go to New York? Should we go to Philadelphia? Should we go to Boston? And then they looked back and they said, why? We're going to have it in the summer, and where is everybody? They all left Philadelphia, Boston, and New York, and they're in Saratoga. So let's have it here. So yes, we had tremendous number of great conventions here. Now, we're not going to take things away from Seneca Falls and all the other movements and stuff, but I've been working with some people very extensively on this. We're going to bring out some new stuff, but Saratoga ends up playing a very important role because the key conventions are going to be held here. And our convention hall, which burned down in the 1960s, was up and running, had a capacity of 5,000.
Oh, wow.
It drew a lot of people up until the time that it suffered from fire. So, yeah, it was a natural place and forward thinking. And again, you want to engage that group, that demographic.
Yeah.
And that was the way to do it. And that's why Saratoga was just a natural for it. So
that's great. So I took a tour here once with Jamie, and we talked about, there was a room, I don't know if it was the hotel room, but there was a woman who was very wealthy, and when her husband died, in order to inherit his estate, she had to change her name to his name. Mm. Do you remember this story?
Yeah, it's our current exhibit in here. Frank Leslie was the gentleman. Frank Leslie, if those of you that have any background in history know that Frank Leslie Illustrated was a phenomenal weekly magazine. They called it back then. It was more like a newsletter. But he covered a lot of the actions in the Civil War, etc. And it was profitable, etc. But it began to wane. And he wasn't doing, which is typical. I've given a lot of talks on women of the 1800s, and I got to tell you that this story repeats itself many, many times. Madame Jamel, we can go on and on and on. And eventually, his wife takes over, and she's trying to rescue the business.
Yeah.
And because of the pushback and the laws, she ends up changing her name to Frank Leslie. And then the story that's so wonderful with this is that she turns it around and becomes so profitable. At time of her death, she willed about $970,000 to the suffrage movement.
Wow.
That was key because with that extra money, it helped to push everything over in 1917 for ratification in New York. And as Woodrow Wilson said, once New York went, the rest of the East Coast went. and then all of a sudden we had the amendment at the national level.
That's fantastic. So Frank Leslie played a big role in women's suffrage and us
No matter which,
getting our right to vote.
no matter which Frank Leslie you want to talk about. Yeah.
The female version, of course.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, there's some really great stories. I do a fair number of talks, and I always try to dive into that. There's hardly any written accolades for women of the period. That's not fair, and it should be changed, and that's what we're trying to do here, trying to get a little bit more broader approach, and our curator, Michael, is very good at that, too. So.
I love that. That's so great. Beyond the exhibits, what role does the museum play in preserving and sharing Saratoga's identity, both for locals and people who are visiting this place?
Well, we do a lot. First of all, we came into existence in 1883. I think we tell the story of Saratoga better than anybody else. And it's really, not only is it part of our mission statement, but it should be part of what's inside all of us, whether it's on the board or people that are working here, is the fact that we should tell the story. And including in that, in order to tell it correctly, the artifacts have to be preserved. Now, we don't have an unlimited amount of storage. We have approximately 15,000 artifacts that we house here. It is. We wish we could do more, but again, storage is at a premium and limited off-site, and we are kind of boutique in terms of our footprint here. But I got to say that if I am most proud of what we do, is we perpetually update and refine the history through our archival work, our research. We do a lot of research, and we try to set the stage and write different articles, et cetera, to enlighten people. But we do reach out to a tremendous amount of visitors, and that is the key. We have a collaboration with your people. You're probably aware of our Grand Gilded and Glorious walking tour.
The visitor center.
Hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of people have gone through and taken that. By doing that, we're reaching into a large number of visitors to the city that are going to learn something about the grandeur of the city and its history.
Yeah.
And quite possibly, because that's where you got to do it, you got to have something to bring them back with.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of, I'll remind you of Saratoga. No, when they get there, there better be something good to do.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we have here is for a large number of people, they find this to be a real good spot. So I think we take it very seriously. I know I do. Having grown up here, it means a lot to me. So.
Oh, I love that. I do want to talk more about the walking tours. So I know you guys work in collaboration with the Heritage Area Visitor Center. Can you talk a little bit about the walking tours, when they take place, how you can sign up for them?
Starting in July, they will run Tuesday through Saturday. They're 10:30. You can visit the Heritage Visitor Center site, and you can do online ticketing through them. Our guides, joint guides that we've trained, meet the groups over there and basically provide them with talk about the trolley station, which is where the visitor center is, and the role transportation played, and it was also a drink hall. So we're back to mineral water again, which is good. And then across, and we do a walking tour for part of that time in Congress Park, and we taste test the springs, talk about the geology of it, et cetera. Then from there in here to do the ballrooms and the gaming parlor downstairs, and then up here to high stakes and into hotels usually. That provides an hour and a half overview of the city's history. Plus, what we've collaborated on is the idea that we can offer a return visit for guests. Usually we end around noon. It starts at 10:30, ends at noon, hour and a half. A lot of people are like, I'm off to lunch. Well, of course. Here's a pass. Come on back after lunch, and until we close today, spend more time with us.
Oh, that's great.
So there's a lot of value to it, and our guides are very, very good. They're well trained, and they're going to get a good tour. So
I love that.
So
if you're visiting Saratoga, make sure you put the History Museum on the top of your list. If you want to do the walking tour and learn more about the history of Saratoga, check out the springs and the Congress Park, and then end here, make sure you visit the Heritage Area Visitor Center to get your ticket.
very well said. Very good.
Thank you. Now here's a quick message from our sponsor. If you've ever struggled with what to say during life's toughest moments or how to show up for someone who's grieving, A Place of Yes is the podcast for you. Hosted by Heather Strader, president of a local nonprofit, Jake's Help from Heaven, this show is honest, helpful, funny, and deeply relatable. We all experience grief at some point, and Heather has a way of making you feel seen, understood, and like you've just met your new best friend. Tune in on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, Charlie, we have to know, Canfield or Morrissey?
I mean, overall, I think I go with John Morrissey. He was a thug. He was bare knuckles boxing champion, but he was our thug.
Love that.
He was one tough guy. He was an enforcer for the Dead Rabbits gang. If you've ever seen the movie The Gangs of New York, Leonardo DiCaprio plays the role of John Morrissey. There's an unfortunate murder in New York, and he has to vacate, which means he comes to Saratoga. That's how we get him. Most importantly, and I've collaborated with a lot of nonprofits on this as president, what he brought was some real insightful things. For instance, he starts this building only after he's run a gaming house on the west side of Saratoga, over on Matilda Street, which you don't recognize because it was renamed into Woodlawn Avenue.
Oh.
But he had a gaming house, and then in 1863, he's going to start the racetrack.
Yes, he's very well known as the founder or credited as the founder of Saratoga Racecourse.
He does a lot of the hard work, and Jerome and Hunter and Travers, because they are more socially accepted, get a lot of the accolades. It took us a long time to get a picture of him in the racing museum.
Oh.
But I like Morrissey. He had a soft side. I've seen a lot of his letters to his wife, etc. He did have a soft side, but he was insightful. He only had a 5th grade education, but he was way beyond that in terms of how he operated. Now, Richard A. Canfield comes to us, and he buys the property after Morrissey passes away, 47.
That's young. How did he die?
Pneumonia.
Oh.
He had, you see, I mean, here he is, enforcer for the Dead Rabbits gang and Tammany Hall. And Tammany Hall is a corrupt arm of government at the time.
Yeah.
And yet, he turns it around and he runs for state legislature. And then finally, he's a U.S. congressman.
Yes.
So he runs for re-election, and he's a tough guy. I mean, they describe his physical, and he's not all that big, but for back then, I guess he was. But he decides, I'm not going to wear a coat when I go out, and it rains, and it's cold in the spring, and he gets pneumonia, and he dies on the 2nd floor of the Adelphi Hotel on May 1st, 1878.
Wow.
So, but he's quite the guy. Yeah.
You talked about his 5th grade education and his love for his wife. And I have to ask, because I know not too long ago, there was a campaign to raise money for his wife, because the story, at least I know, is that she was kind of the brains behind everything. She was very well educated. She helped him with the reading and writing and all of those things.
That's true.
But she died without her name on a grave.
Well, I mean, you hit on this earlier in terms of the need for the changes in laws and vote and women's suffrage and everything else. And that's the things that I've touched on in my career. And unfortunately, when she passed away, the laws of the day were that she had nothing. So she died in abject poverty. And that's why a name wasn't originally, it is now, on her headstone. So it all points up a lot of the different problems that we had back then. And again, and I don't want to drill down too deep on this, the Gilded period, the gap, it's incredible. I mean, the wealthy were so ultra wealthy, and everybody else was just down at the bottom, just able to survive.
Yeah.
And which is going to give rise eventually, to the progressive period and Teddy Roosevelt and everything. But at the same time, oh my God, it was terrible. So once he passed, she went down with the lower levels, and there was no help.
That's tough.
Gets tough. Yeah, it does. Now, Canfield, when he comes in, Canfield follows a lot of the rules that Morrissey had, which were very, very good. He wanted the upper crust. So like I always say, the demographics men, he disaggregates the demographic by having wealthy men only. No locals. No locals could ever gamble here. My family's been here 7 generations. Nobody could get in the door. But what he did was, in order to survive, he gave back to all the nonprofits and churches in town. And that sealed the deal, because the law was what the law was for 41 years. It was totally illegal. But yet they never enforced it, because everybody in town, it was Robin Hood. Nobody ever lost any money from town, but they all benefited from it.
That's great.
So Canfield continues it. The one thing that Canfield can get credited is our ballroom.
Yes, it's beautiful. A lot of weddings are held here in Saratoga.
But the ballroom is the original comp. If you gamble, if you go to Vegas or Atlantic City or years ago or whatever, comps are big. And a comp is where you are compensated for the amount that you gamble. The equation is very simple. The longer somebody stays on property, the more likely they are to gamble. Mm-hmm. So they want to keep you there. So what they say is, oh, you've been with us for a week, you've been with us 2 days, and you've gambled a certain amount, because they've charted all. Why don't you stay an extra night? Here's a free night. Why don't you go to this show? Why don't you do this? Canfield comes up with the idea of putting the restaurant on. That's what the ballroom was. It was a restaurant. And you got to remember, no women and no families were allowed in the building except in the restaurant.
Wow.
So what happens is, Dad can take everybody to dinner. Jean Colombin is the French chef that cooks there. Pay him $5,000 to cook for 3 months. Everybody else is making $600, $800 in a whole year. He's making $5,000 in 3 months. He loses between $50,000 and $75,000 on the restaurant each summer. But dads are leaving the family, going in and gambling, and they're making it up 200 times here.
All right.
So
that's a business model for you.
Go to the Mob Museum in Vegas. We get a lot of accolades. Saratoga's the one that taught everybody how to have a comp, and it's right here.
Wow. I also heard a funny story when I was touring here that when someone would pick a fish at dinner, they would show them the fish, and then they bring it back into the kitchen, and there was a chute that sent it right back to the pond. Is that true?
No. No, it's...
Why? That's a good one.
Well, it is, and I tell every fourth grader that one and everything else. We don't let that get in the way of a good story, but the bottom line is the trout pond is still there, and we've got trout in it today.
Love that.
But we've never been able to find the actual tube that would bring the fish back from the kitchen, but it's probably rooted in some kind of actuality, but we haven't been able to really prove it.
Yeah.
So, you know what? It's a good story. And the whole idea, and I use it when I'm teaching math for fourth graders. I go, now that we know how this thing works, let's say we start the first day of the summer with 75 fish. How many will we have at the end? And it takes a couple to go, 75? Yes, that's right, 75
That's
fish.
Me and the fourth graders love it. Many say this building is haunted. What's the story behind those ghostly rumors? Have you or anyone here on the museum staff ever had an eerie experience?
All the time.
Tell me more.
All the time. 15 years ago, it was year 2010, we used this as our boardroom, and we moved things out and put in a board table. And it was in February of 2010, asked for a motion to adjourn, got it. And it was a snowy night in February, and it was cold. We used to meet a little bit later at night. Everybody wanted to get out because they had to go to work the next day. So it usually was a track meet down the stairs and everybody out to their car. That particular night, for some odd reason, doesn't sound like much, but everybody hesitated for about 30 to 45 seconds as they put things away. And it was at that point that a younger person on our board said, if I tell you a story, would you promise you won't laugh at us? And of course, we're like, oh, yeah. And tell us everything. So as a result, he told the story, and I watched the eyes around the table all change. And I always joke, still to this day, that we went from a board table to a confessional. And then everybody's like, 3 weeks ago this happened to me, 4 months ago this happened. Everybody had an experience, but nobody talked.
Wow.
So again, it took a couple of the younger guys saying, we ought to contact the show Ghost Hunters.
Yes.
So we did. The next day, filled out just informational stuff, a small field, 250 characters, describe, what's going on. We had a hard time because there were so many stories.
Yeah, I bet.
So we kind of cannibalized a couple and put it in, sent it. Big disclaimer down at the bottom that said, please allow 6 to 8 weeks for us to get back to you because we're so busy.
Yeah.
They called in about 45 minutes and they said, we're very intrigued. Can we come? So they did a pre, then they did the original, filmed it, etc. And then it was on. We got a call from them, I believe it was the end of August that year, and they said, you're going to air live. It was on a Wednesday night, and it was like the 10th, 12th, 13th, something like that of October. So we were really pretty stupid. We thought...
I wasn't expecting you to say that.
No. We were naive. But what we said was, we're on national TV. Let's open up the place. And we set up full fire capacity in the ballroom. We did a projector screen, etc.
Yeah.
Everybody came in. We didn't charge. We gave away drinks. We gave away food. We gave away the ranch. And at the end of the show, they were all filing out, and literally about 1 out of every 2 or 3 people would say, I loved it. And then there was a follow-up, which is, when are you going to have a ghost tour?
Yes.
Now, I had a tour company for 20 years, and they just turned to me and they said, can you write it? And I said, well, yeah, but, I want it to be more cerebral. I don't want this thing to be some idiotic type
Yeah.
thing.
Real deal.
Yeah, and when I was at MIT, there was a guy that wrote a really good paper, because I was doing astrophysics at that point, and he was talking about how to apply energy bleeds with different dimensions and how it might be ghostly, that kind of stuff. And I thought that's the way to go. So when we wrote it that way.
Wow.
And we adhere to it. And still to this day, that's the way we approach it. We don't go after, trying to scare you or anything else. We've got a lot of great things. And this is another collaboration we do with the Heritage Vision Center.
Yeah.
In October, every Thursday night, we have Trolley Ghosts, where we go out in the community, and then we're up here. And, we've got a little girl that plays out in the hall, and she lives next door, in the room next door. And we've got her on video. We've got a lot of different things.
That's so cool.
But we don't let those things out. I mean, the stories, we've been interviewed by a lot of people. We'll tell you the basics. But what happens here on a weekly basis, and it does every week, we get to the point where we just sit and we go, yeah, it happened again, didn't it? Yeah.
That's so cool.
This room's pretty active. My third floor has always been mine. That's pretty darn active too. We get a lot of doors that slam on us. We get a lot of sound, like we have these candelabras that have these
Glass.
yeah, the crystals that hang, and they will play us songs. Now I've 36 years in science. Come on, I tear it apart. I put a heavy duty fan next to them. You can't move it, but yet they'll play a song for you.
That's incredible.
There's a number of psychics that have been through with us, and I will tell you this, that the beauty of it is you never tell a psychic what you've experienced. And you just say, tell me what. And it's repetitive. And they'll have the same name, they'll have the same layout, etc.
That's so cool. The house that I grew up in Schuylerville, was adjacent to the Saratoga Monument. So my yard and the monument's yard connected, and I could see the monument out of my bedroom window.
Sure.
But we had a ghost, and he was a Revolutionary War soldier.
That's what I expected.
And it was so cool. Like, when my brother was 2, he watched him walk out of my house up to the monument, and that's how he knew he was a soldier. When I was little, I would stay up all night having these lengthy conversations with someone who I called Mr. Tiki Taki. Don't remember what he looks like, but my brothers could hear me through through the wall. And when I was in 7th grade, we had carbon monoxide poisoning, which is wild. I can't believe I lived to tell this story, but we were in a very old house. It was built in the 1800s, and the furnace was leaking carbon monoxide.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was another pipe that took out bad fumes, the ones you can actually smell, because you can't smell carbon monoxide. So it was like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and my cat was like kind of scratching on my neck. And I opened my eyes, but I couldn't move. My head hurt so bad from the carbon monoxide. I felt like I was a bobblehead. So I literally crawled to my mom's room, and I like scratched on her door. And when she opened the door, I was like, my room smells funny. Next thing you know, I pass out and I end up in an ambulance on the way to Saratoga Hospital.
Wow.
So because I said that, she sent my stepfather into the basement to investigate, and we noticed that the pipe was broke. But it didn't just break. It looked like someone had split it in half so we could smell the fumes. Otherwise, we would have just went back to bed and not have known any different.
Yeah.
So flash forward a couple days, we all end up in Westchester Hospital. We're in the hyperbarics chamber, getting pumped full of oxygen. And the whole fire department is in Schuylerville cleaning out our house, and all the windows were open. So it gets even better. When the guy came to install the new furnace, he was in the basement. Not a soul was at the house. And he said it sounded like there was a party upstairs. Cupboard doors were open. Someone was walking around. Toilets were flushing. He was actually afraid to come out of the basement. And it's just a crazy story. So I believe our ghost was good. I think he saved my life and my family's life. But we never had like a scary feeling. It was always warm. Like you think your house is haunted and it's spooky and you can't sleep and everything is frightening.
Yes.
But it wasn't. It was this warm feeling. So I love these stories. Like I 110% believe in all of it.
So do I. And again, people say to me, you taught geology and astrophysics. How can you go down that road?
Yeah.
I go, actually, it's a lot easier than you think.
Right? Because the parallels between space and time.
And energy flows. And I mean, energy is intrinsic to the entire universe. And that's what all this is about. How do they gain energy? How do they, present themselves, move around, do the things that they have to? It's, but it's something that, again, I'll have to use the word cerebral. We don't want this to turn into a haunted hayride or something.
Absolutely. So do you offer haunted tours all year round or just in October?
Here in the building, we, starting at the beginning of July, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m., we have haunted ghost tours of the building. Now, it's 11 in the morning, but that's just what we can offer. We usually sell out, and that goes right till Labor Day. And then in October, we do the collaboration with the trolleys and everything, and that sells out, as you know.
Yes, that's a great one. You guys dress up, and it's all spooky. I love that one.
Got to have some fun.
I know. If you could go back in time and witness one moment inside this building, what would it be and why?
One.
Or two, but
let's take
one specifically.
The embarrassment of Bedamillion Gates. I hated the gentleman from history. He was a thug. He was bad. He was very, very wealthy, but he was not a nice person. And he tried to hurt a lot of people. And actually, Canfield really brought him down up here. He also took a hit that day at the track, too. But, I would have loved to have seen that. He lost probably the equivalent of about $9 million in today's money up here that day.
In one day?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, probably just because I like to see bullies get taken care of. But
love that.
That's probably, if it has to be within,
Very cool. Yeah. Is there anything else about the Canfield Casino or the Saratoga Springs History Museum that you'd like to share?
I mean, I'm always going to tell you, come visit us. We're open 7 days a week during the season, and we're a 10 to 4 place, and we'll, as best we can, give you a guided tour, especially the downstairs included. And I think we've got a lot. We've got a lot of really great exhibits. We tell a good story. And just come see us, because give us a chance. That's the thing. Come see us. Yeah.
I agree. It's a spectacular tour. It's a great museum. Hands down, you want to put it on your list. So, Charlie, if someone wanted to purchase tickets, how much do they cost and where do they go?
tickets to the museum proper can be done online. Again, Saratoga History Museum. And if you were an adult, $15, a senior is $12. We have, younger children are going to come in for free and stuff like that. But it's a modest price. It's one of the cheapest museums in the city, but I think it offers you just as much as any other museum. So.
Absolutely, and more, if not.
Thank you.
I
like
love
that.
it here. I love it here. So whether you want to learn about the Gilded Age or the Vanderbilts or the spooky tales that Charlie and his team can tell you, make sure you visit SaratogaHistoryMuseum.com.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. This has been so fun.
Good. I'm glad you had fun because I always have fun. So.
I had a great time. Thank you so much, Charlie.
Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Please like, subscribe, rate, or review our show. Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by Julie & Co. This podcast is produced by Discover Saratoga and Bright-Sided Media.